we have to continue our lesson that we ended last time on electoral system and processes. During the first lesson or the last lesson, we look at the definition of election, types of election, and purposes of election. Now, let's go back and try if you can recall some of the things that we learned. You have to come out with the differences between referendum and plebiscite as type of elections. Second one, you have to come out with when by-election and referendum is conducted. Before the lesson comes to an end, I will look at the definition that you came out with, or how you were able to explain them. In today's lesson, we're going to continue, but we are going to look at electoral fraud. Then we link it with free and fair election and factors that can help us to get free and fair election. These are the objectives that I want to achieve. So these are the things that I expect you to have before the lesson comes to an end. So these are the objectives that we will achieve. So before the lesson comes to an end, we should be able to define electoral malpractice or electoral fraud. Then we should be able to define what free and fair election is. Then we should be able to identify the conditions necessary for free and fair election. Now, first one, we are looking at electoral fraud or electoral malpractice. When we say something is a fraud or malpractice, then it means there is an element of illegalities in it for it to be fraud. Then you should also know that for something to be fraud, then it means there is irregularities in it. First element of illegalities or irregularities. So when we talk of electoral fraud or electoral malpractice, then we are referring to irregularities or illegalities that people engage themselves in so far as the conduct of election is concerned, which do not help us to get good electoral results. So when we talk of electoral malpractice, we are saying they are irregularities or illegalities that people engage themselves in during election, which affect the credibility of the election. So when people engage themselves in fraud or malpractice, then it means the results of the election is compromised in one way or the other. So we are going to move forward by looking at some of the electoral fraud or electoral malpractices or the irregularities that people engage themselves in, which mar the beauty of election. So we are moving to look at some of the electoral malpractices in our country. First, we will look at what we call gerrymandering. We know when election is being conducted, citizens can engage themselves in practices that are illegal. At times, it's not the citizens themselves, but the one or the body that is in charge of the conduct of elections in a democratic state. And in every democratic state, the body that is responsible for the conduct of election is the Electoral Commission. Electoral malpractice that we call gerrymandering is caused by the Electoral Commission, but not the voters themselves. So what do we mean by saying gerrymandering? The Electoral Commissioner, is his duty to demarcate or to delimitate the country into constituencies. At times, they deliberately demarcate the country into constituencies in order to give electoral advantage to a political party. Let's look at it this way. We know Santase or Asukwa is 100% for NPP. So if the Electoral Commissioner wants NPP to get more seats in Kumasi, he would demarcate again the constituencies in Kumasi into number of seats to increase the number of members of parliament in Kumasi because he knows whenever it is increased, it will go to the advantage of NPP. When that one happens, then he just did that to give electoral advantage to NPP. That one is what we call gerrymandering. So it means demarcating the country into constituencies with the aim of giving electoral advantage to a political party. And it's electoral malpractice which should be discouraged in a country. That is why always we need electoral commissioner that will be fair, looking at the population before demarcating the country into constituency. Let's look at the second point that we call rigging. When we say rigging in an election, then it means one is manipulating the electoral results in order to get advantage over the opponent. Rigging, manipulating the electoral results in order to get advantage over an opponent. So here it may be I'm going to add ballot or vote to mine, or what an opponent has been able to secure, I'm going to reduce his number. The moment I tamper with the numbers in order to get advantage over the other, then we say rigging has taken place. So one will say they steal, or they add, or they reduce. So in rigging, we manipulate the numbers in order to get advantage over the other. Another electoral fraud that we shouldn't entertain in our country is impersonation. My name is Afriyie. This is my voter's ID card. My name is Afriyie. This is my voter's ID card. Instead of going to use it to vote myself, someone picks the card and pretends to be Afriyie. Goes to the booth with my voter's ID card to vote, claiming he is Afriyie. When that happens, then the person has placed himself in the person of Afriyie. That is what we call impersonation. So impersonation here means voting on behalf of a registered voter who has not mandated you. Voting on behalf of a registered voter who has not mandated you. When that happens, you have committed an offense of impersonation. But the registered voter can mandate you by law to vote on his behalf. That one is not electoral fraud, and that one we call it proxy. So proxy means voting on behalf of someone who has mandated you legally. If you are mandated legally and you vote, that one is not electoral fraud. We can also look at victimization. Nowadays, most of the political parties are using macho men and others. They are using macho men and others so far as election is concerned. And they use their strength, their stature to bully other people. And this keeps some people away from voting. That one is what we call victimization. We also have what we call double voting, where Kweku will try to vote 2 or 3 times or more for his party in order to get advantage. All these things are negative practices which we shouldn't encourage in our election. When these practices occur in our election, then they mar the beauty of the election. They don't make the election to be fair. They don't make the conduct of the election to be free and fair. That is why we should discourage. But one of the factors or things that we need as a democratic state for the election of the country to be credible is what we call free and fair election. But the electoral frauds do not help us to get free and fair election. So when we talk of free and fair election, then we are saying election is said to be free and fair if the conduct of the election is free from irregularities or fraud or the malpractices that we have named. And because of that, the results become acceptable by all citizens. So to this end, we are just saying free and fair election, number one. For us to have free and fair election, there should be total absence of the fraud, malpractices, irregularities in election. So you can say such as, then you keep one of the frauds or two over there. So free and fair election. Election is said to be free and fair when the conduct of the election is free from irregularities such as double voting, impersonation, gerrymandering, and as a result, the results of the election reflects the true wishes or choice of the people. And when this happens, the result becomes acceptable to all people. So this is what free and fair election is about. And we need it as a state in order for our choice of candidate to be accepted by all. But one thing that we have observed is not all countries are able to have free and fair election. At times, after election, some countries dispute the results by refusing to accept them, not as it always happens in Ghana, where losing candidates accept. So now let's look at some of the conditions necessary for free and fair election. These are the things that we need as a country. We need to do as a country. We need to practice as a country. We need to enhance as a country if we want our elections results to be free from malpractices so that the result become accepted. For us to have free and fair election, first one, there should be existence of independent and impartial electoral commission. Independent, non-partisan, or impartial electoral commission. In the conduct of election in the democratic state, the body that is constitutionally mandated to conduct election or to supervise election in a state is the electoral commission. Before a country can have free and fair election, then the commission should not be controlled by any other arm of government, whether the legislature, the executive, or the judiciary. The electoral commissioner should be given the free will to decide what he wants to do without being influenced by anyone. Any country where the electoral commission is not independent and they are influenced by any arm of government, they can't have credible election. So in order to have credible election, we are saying the electoral commissioner should be independent. Being independent means you are free to take your own decision without any external control. And they should be non-partisan. That doesn't mean they don't vote. But once you are appointed by the chief executive of the state, that is the president, as the electoral commissioner, the moment you are appointed, you don't show where you belong so that you can be fair in your work. Another condition that we need in order to have perfect, free and fair election is independent judiciary. Independence of judiciary or independence judicial system, any of them, the same point. We know the three arms of government, one of them to be the judiciary, which is headed by the Chief Justice. They settle electoral disputes, and they also settle disputes among people in the state. This body should be independent so that when there is any electoral dispute or any abuse so far as the electoral conduct is concerned, they can pass true verdict without favoring any political party. And when the judicial system is 100% independent, they can disqualify even the presidential candidate with the law by saying what you did contradicts the law, and as such, this is what should be done. But when the judiciary is manipulated by arm of government like the president, even when the president or the one on the seat loses the election, they can't pinpoint for the person to go. So because we have independent judicial systems, that is why our election in which Nana Addo lost and went to court, he was able or listen to the verdict of the judiciary, because we know they were not going to favor anyone. Another good thing that we need in order to have free and fair election is there should be proper demarcation of the country into constituencies. Here, and at this point, it was explained under gerrymandering. So we are saying if we want to have perfect, free and fair election, then we should demarcate the country into constituencies, not to give a certain tribe or a certain political party advantage over the other. Here, it is perfectly done when the population of the state or the constituency is considered. In order to have free and fair election, then there should be provision of adequate security. Provision of adequate security here, we are saying they should be provided before, during, and even after election. Most people go to the electoral centers or election centers because they believe they are strong. They bully electoral officers. Some steal the ballot boxes. Some intimidate people over there, put fear in them for some not even to come and vote. So the police and soldiers, when they are around, not that they are there to intimidate people, but it makes those with negative intentions to destroy the beauty of election to stay away. This gives the people the chance to have the election without any fear. So we are saying in order to have free and fair election, during election, the electoral officers, electoral materials, and even the people who are going to vote should be given enough security. They should feel secure so that they will not vote under any threat or fear or intimidation. And when there is adequate security, the electoral officers or officials also feel protected, and they don't do things to favor anyone out of fear. Another good thing that we should have if we want to have free and fair election is there should be periodic review and compilation of voters register. There should be periodic review and compilation of voters register. In a democratic state, the fact that you are 18 years does not mean on the day of election you will vote. You should be sound-minded person. You should have attained the universal adult suffrage age, which is 18. But you need to go and register. And where do you register? You only go and register when the voters register is opened for you to go and write your name. So the Electoral Commission has a season where he opens the voters register to review it so that people can go, people who have attained the universal adult suffrage age can go and register. When it is being reviewed, the second one is to remove names of those who have passed away and are no more living. So when the voters register is reviewed periodically, first and foremost, it gives the opportunity to people who don't have their names in the register, who now qualify to vote, to add their names to it, so that they won't be disenfranchised. When we talk of disenfranchised here, that is when you deny someone his right to vote, then we say you have disenfranchised the person. So when the voters register is not reviewed periodically, those who have attained the universal adult suffrage age and have to go and register and vote can't vote. That means the election has not been free and fair because it has not given the mandate to all qualified adults to vote. The revision of the register also helps us to remove the names of those who have passed away in order to reduce impersonation and others. Another good point that we can also have if we want to have free and fair election is there should be enough or adequate political education. We know whenever we educate someone, we pass on knowledge or information to the person. And when people become more informed about what is happening around them, they are able to adjust and accept it. So here we are saying a lot of people go to the polls just to intimidate people. Some people prevent others from voting because they don't even know it's their right. And some people don't go and vote at all because they don't even know that election is being held this day or the next day. So here we are saying if you want to have good, free and fair election, citizens of the state should be educated on why they should vote, the processes that they have to follow in voting. Because someone went to the election center, accidentally had 2 of the ballot papers, and he voted for 2 because that is what was given to him. But if he had been educated that you have one, there is a principle of one man, one vote in a democratic state. If you want to have free and fair election, accidentally that person wouldn't have voted twice. So when citizens are voted, they know what to do at the center and they do it perfectly, which helps us to have free and fair election. Maybe the last point that I would like to touch on is if we want to have free and fair election, we are also saying after voting, first, we shouldn't go and hide somewhere with the name of going to count the results. We shouldn't also wait for 10 years, 10 days, 7 years, 7 days, 5 years, 5 days, 3 years, 3 days before we count the results. If we want to have free and fair election where the results will be accepted by all, then we are saying there should be open and public counting of votes. Why should this happen? We voted and we are making choice. I want party A, you want party B. After voting, why not count the results open for the voters or all the citizens who voted to know the one who won at their station? If this one is not done, open for everyone to see, it creates doubts in the minds of people, because some people may think I voted for this person and I know this person might have voted for this person, and because of that this person should have won, which might not be the results. So if we want election to be credible so that the results will be accepted by citizens, then we are saying there should be open and immediate counting of votes just after election in order to remove doubts in the minds of people so that they will accept the results. These are some of the factors which we need as a state, which we need as a country in our next election if we want our results to be credible so that it will be accepted. When we follow this, no candidate will say he won't accept the results. Before I bring the lesson to an end, let's go back. Before I started the lesson, I said, based on our previous lesson, let's try to differentiate when runoff and by-elections are held. So now you have your answers. Let's compare with and to what I am saying and see if you were able to get it right. Runoff is held after general election if no candidate wins the general election because no candidate secures the required percentage of votes. For instance, in Ghana, we said, according to the constitution, you need 50% plus 1 or more than 50% of the valid vote cast before you become a winner. Because there is percentage attached, we are using mandated majority. So, after general election, if no candidate secures the mandated majority, then the second election, which is held between the two leading parties, so that at least we can get a winner. That's what we call runoff. So runoff is election which is held, number 1, after general election. Second point, between two leading parties in general election. Third point, if no candidate secure the required percentage of votes cast in general election. Then the second aspect is by-election. By-election is held only when the parliamentary seat or local government. We said by-election is held only when parliamentary seat or local seat becomes vacant. And we said it becomes vacant when the member of parliament or the occupant dies, resigns, or is sacked. And we were emphatic here by saying in the presidency, when the president dies, there is no by-election because the constitution has stated that is the vice that takes over. And the second one was, let's look at the differences between plebiscite and referendum. And they are, the answers that I expect you to give is, they are all elections. That's the first one. They are all types of elections. They are all conducted in the state. Often, they are all yes or no voting. But the difference here is referendum is conducted to take a stand on constitutional or legal issues. But plebiscite is on national issues. That's the difference. So should we change the constitution? Should we amend the constitution? Should we adopt a provision to add to the constitution? Should we repeal the constitution? Because it's a constitutional matter. When we are voting on that, we call it referendum. Before the lesson comes to an end, these are the things that I want you to try your hand on before we meet the next lesson. You are coming out with 3 conditions that ensure free and fair election, which I never mentioned in my submission today. Next time when we meet, I will just look at it. We go on. Thank you. God bless you.